down, and right above me, as you can see here, I'm going to see if I can get this a little bit more. There we go. This is Hilda Labrada Gore. Now, Hilda, are you any relationship to the bodybuilder Lee Labrada?
You know, I think we are related. You might be able to tell from my biceps here.
I was going to say, and that's actually what I was worried about. Well,
we're on the same team, so I won't take you down.
Oh, I certainly appreciate that. Now, you have the Wise Traditions podcast. You have written books. You talk all about like this integrative healing approach. And but before we get any further, Miss Dawn is sitting over here, and she reads in the chat.
Okay.
Good evening. Hi.
Hi,
You
Dawn.
can't see me. I'm the little ghost that lives.
Dawn is just the voice.
We have Babushka, human being, Christine, Noel, Pat's here, LaShawn. We're all here.
Oh, it looks like the crew's all here.
Nice.
So can you do me a favor and just tell us a little about you and how you got to this point in your life?
Oh my gosh, Sergey, it's really hard to put my finger on it or encapsulate it because it started before I was born. If you
Right.
would just indulge me for a second.
Take your time.
Basically, my mom was exposed to the German measles when I was in utero. And if a pregnant woman, even today, is exposed to the German measles, the doctors say it's likely their child would be born with a birth defect. So my mom knew before I was born there was going to be an issue. And when I came into being, there was nothing apparent to the naked eye, but basically they found a hole in my heart when I was just a couple of months old. And so the doctors monitored me for years. Finally, they did open heart surgery on me when I was 9. And I think that experience actually, while I'm grateful for the surgeon's skill, it actually made me never want to set foot in a hospital again.
Right.
So that was kind of my beginning. And then the way to do it, I thought at first was just exercise, Sergey. I was like all about fitness. I taught classes for decades, really, all kinds of fitness classes, boot camp, all these different things. But
Because that's the natural, that's the natural
Yes.
inclination, right? We're all told that.
Absolutely. So it's just like diet and exercise. Well, diet, I was following kind of the US dietary guidelines and they weren't doing me any favors. As a matter of fact, I would be teaching a class and I would start getting like shaky, and not because I was working out too hard, it's because my blood sugar had dipped. So I was eating kind of a low fat diet and I thought, well, I guess I'm just one of those people that needs to graze and eat all the time, until I happened upon the work of the Weston A. Price Foundation. And they're the ones that I make the podcast for. They were the ones saying, we shouldn't be eating the modern way. We should be eating the way that has nourished people for millennia. And that
Right.
kind of has gotten me going on all this stuff.
So, I was taking a look at your podcast, and you seem very adventurous.
Oh my gosh, totally. So this is the thing. The foundation basically set me in a direction. I do make the show for them, but they were like, okay, here's the work of this dentist from the 1930s. He traveled the world looking for the healthiest people on the planet. And what he found was, as you can imagine, Sergey, their diets were very different. Like the
Right.
people in the South Sea Pacific Islands were eating seafood and fresh tropical fruits, and the people in Alaska were eating whale blubber and seal oil. And so he's like, okay, wait, these people are all eating different foods and they're all thriving.
Right.
So he noticed that they were eating their local, organic, seasonal, and traditional foods. And so this is the impetus of the foundation. But I was like, well, I want to see if people are still eating and living this way. So I've started traveling the world on my own.
And now you built that into, of course, your Ancestral Secrets. Is that correct?
Yes, and that is a course, but to be honest with you, it's not turned into a book just yet, but I do want it to, because I've realized it's not just food, it's not just diet. There's a whole way of living that we're missing, and I'm really happy to go into all that. But I also do want to talk to you about the skies before we wrap up at the end here.
Oh, no, absolutely.
But let me just say that, like, my first love that I was overlooking was kind of the great multivitamin in the sky. And by that, I mean the sun. Like, I didn't know, Sergey, until I started visiting these indigenous peoples, they get up with the sun and they go to bed with the sun.
Right.
In Mongolia, in Ethiopia, like everywhere I've traveled, in Colombia most recently, I met these people called mamos, these wisdom keepers of the Kogi, Arhuaco, and Wiwa tribes. And I would go to catch the morning sun by the water and they would beat me to it. I was like, how did they get there so early? And I talked to a fellow who understands their culture more than I do. And he said, Hilda, they believe that the day is like a wave and we should ride it early. And I've learned from Dr. Jack Cruz and Thaddeus Owen and I could go on Dewey Lehman, all these different experts on the Wise Traditions podcast, that the morning sunrise sun is a particular wavelength that is very helpful for our hormones to function properly, for our melatonin to get produced and released at the right time so we sleep better at night. It helps with our metabolism, our energy, all the things. So the sun is one of the first secrets I like to talk about.
I think that's fantastic. I've heard that morning sun and I mean the very first sunrise, you're supposed to actually look at that. It's one of the few times that you can actually look at the sun, and it feeds in a rhythm, not only nutrients to your eye, literally in through your eyes, but some people think to your soul as well.
Oh my gosh, that doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me at all because I've read this book by a Christian mystic called Light as a Living Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I think his name was Abram Ivanhoff. And in it, he says, we can't see it. I mean, if you want to get woo-woo, I'm ready to go there. Let me just say, he goes, we can't see it, but there are wagons full of nutrients that these little beings are bringing down on the sun's rays to us,
Right.
and they return with their wagons empty back up to the sun. He said this is constantly happening. He says, because I think he was from the Bulgaria area, and he said in his own language, the visible light is the Svetlina, and the invisible light is the Videlina. And he said, Sergey, he says, we spend all our lives seeking gold. He said, but that's just a pale imitation of the liquid sunshine, the real gold that can nourish us deeply. And I'm so convinced of this because, as I like to say, science is catching up to ancient wisdom because now we know about the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which you were alluding to, this like receptor in our brain that gets the information from the eyes and takes it to every cell in our body. It energizes the mitochondria. It syncs our circadian rhythm so that we can be more in sync with nature. And yes, our body is only the better for it. We think food is the primary way to get nourished. It is important. But science has actually shown that 2/3 of our mitochondrial energy comes from the sun, not from food. And if you think about it, actually, food gets sunlight. So we are getting light secondhand, but why not get it firsthand? So going back to your point about sun gazing, I will say this. I've tried it some until I interviewed a guy, I think his name was Carlos Moreno, about vision and stuff. And he said, if you stare at anything, it's actually not great for you. So he said, you can look at it, but don't spend too much time looking at it, especially if you're not practiced at it. So I do look at it in the morning. I'm grateful for it, but I don't stare at it. I don't try to do like a staring contest or anything like that.
And what I had heard was stare into the sun rays, not directly at the sun. So look in that general direction, but don't blind yourself.
Exactly. I will say this though. I was a certified night owl. Like literally, if there had been a place that could give you a certificate to pin to your wall, I would have had like 20 of them. Because I was just like, it's in my genes. I'm Latina. I don't get going till 10 o'clock at night.
Exactly.
But I did not know that if I just attempted to get morning light, that my whole world would be turned upside down. What I mean by it is this. When I first said to my husband, okay, I'm going to try this for 2 weeks. I'm just going to try to get out within 30 to 45 minutes of sunrise and see what happens. My husband scoffed. He laughed. He's like, we'll see how long this lasts. And then I never went back. Like I was like so energized and encouraged and my rhythm changed. Now you see I'm wearing my blue blocking glasses because I do like to have good light hygiene at night and I like to get to bed at a decent hour. Tonight is an exception. But I just want to say like, your life will change if you even just give it 2 weeks. And this is one reason, actually, I tell especially my younger followers who are addicted to their phones and even use them as alarms. I say, sunrise before screenrise. Do your best to get outside and get that morning sun before you start just scrolling away. There's a reason they call it doom scrolling.
Yeah.
You're getting the light in your eyes. That's the blue light. It's a very narrow spectrum, which is stimulating. It keeps you awake. It doesn't let you sleep, all the things. But then you're also kind of like a puppet on a digital string. Like you're at the beck and call of whatever's on there instead of living your best life. So I start my day on my own terms. I get outside as quickly as possible, get that sunrise sun. You can just spend 15 minutes. I like to spend some time walking and so forth and praying and all these other things. But, I like to stack my hacks. But sunrise before screenrise is a good thing to hold on to. And I'm telling you, everywhere in the world I've traveled, this is what nourishes the people best. It's the sun.
I tell you, it's one of the things that I preach on this show all the time is that we need that energy from the sun. We need the power, and not just us. We also need our plants and our animals. We need the plankton in the ocean and the bees and the frogs and the bacteria. Do you think that geoengineering is causing a decline in our, I don't want to get too spiritual here, but in our spiritual health, as well as our mitochondrial health, as well as our body's ability to sync up with the earth and the sun and the moon?
It's funny that you should mention that because I interviewed Cal Washington and Josh Del Sol. I don't know if you know them from the Empower movement.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, good. I'm glad you do. But maybe not every listener or viewer does. So I'll just say real quick. These two men are convinced that our rights are being challenged by what's going on above us. They say that it is a spiritual battle. And I do think, I look up at the sky now, and even if you're not a spiritual person, you can look up and be like, where did the blue sky go?
Yeah.
Why aren't the clouds puffy like they used to be? Like, it's weird. I feel like I'm in a dystopian novel half the time when I look up and the sun is all clouded over and hazy and almost harder to see than it used to be. So a friend of mine just said this to me the other day. So what I try to do, actually, I'm glad you brought this up, is I try to remind the powers that be, because I don't believe our battle is against flesh and blood. I just say, I am a child of God. Cease and desist. Like, I do not consent to this. And Josh Del Sol and Cal Washington recommend actually taking it a step further. And they recommend kind of embracing our autonomy and our rights as children of God to kind of turn some of the laws on their head. It's a long story, but if anyone's interested, they should go to empowermovement.com or .org and investigate it further. But it's almost like that whole birth certificate thing. It's like, why do I need to prove to anyone with this piece of paper that I'm here on this planet? Obviously, I'm here on this planet. So I'm not fully into those circles, but I hear what you're saying. And I do think we need to stand strong against the forces that are trying to dim the sun. And if anyone thinks we're making this up, like, this is factual information that scientists are working together along with Bill Gates to dim the sun. Why? Because they believe it will help prevent global warming and climate change, but it is a very ill-conceived notion at best. I believe it's not going to get us any closer to a healthier planet.
So can you tell me a little bit about, do you work with the Schumann resonance or anything like that? Or is it more eating local, eating ancestral? Because you have such like this vibrant, incredible spirit that just comes through. I mean, we're hundreds of miles away and I feel it.
They're saying it here too.
Gosh.
They're all
Thank
saying,
you
I love
so
her. I
much.
love her energy.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel so glad to be alive. I think in part it's because of that shaky start I had that I told you about. And I also came to faith as a young girl because I thought, wow, God protected me in the womb. I'm going to live as healthy as possible, giving him the glory. And, so that's all a part of my story. But really, the 6 ancestral secrets are what I hold on to.
Right.
And the 7th one is soil. The 7th one is grounding. It's along the lines of what you're saying. The energy from the earth is healing. And honestly, from both above the sun and below the ground, we've insulated ourselves. A friend of mine says, Hilda, it's like we've become astronauts on our own planet.
Absolutely.
So we're living in an artificial environment most of the time under artificial lighting. And you know what happens to astronauts when they come back to Earth, if they go out into space at all. They're usually weaker. They've got less bone density. They've aged more, and so we're doing that to ourselves. So my little motto is keep your feet on the ground and your face to the sun. as much as possible, Sergey. And I know it's not easy. I've got a job, you've got a job, we've, got to earn a living and so forth. But I try to spend as much time as possible outside because the sun nourishes, and then the earth, as you've alluded to, gives us these negative ions that give
Hmm.
us positive energy.
Right.
I never used to understand why indigenous people call the earth Pachamama or Mother Nature, but now I understand why. Because I believe it's a personification of obviously what God has given us, but I believe the earth is like a mother that wants to take your heavy load off of your back and exchange it in exchange to give you something beautiful and lighter. What I
Hmm.
mean by that is this: we are constantly bombarded by non-native electromagnetic frequencies. It's not just the light that is messing us up, but it's these frequencies, both from electricity, but also from Wi-Fi and cell towers and our cell phones and all the things around us. So this creates a positive charge in the body that is oxidizing. It's kind of like it's stressing our bodies and making it more likely for us to get cancer,
Right.
to simplify it. When we put our feet on the ground, the earth takes that charge away from us and replaces it with a negative charge that's healing, and that so that the negative ions can kind of latch onto the free radicals that could become cancer
Hmm.
causing in the body. So it's this beautiful exchange that, because we're wearing rubber soled shoes all the time, or we're riding in our cars, or we're not connected to the earth at all, we don't take advantage of. So this is why I say keep your feet on the ground and your face to the sun, because it's a simple ancestral way of being. And I want to tell you a really quick story. I was in Ethiopia about 2 or 3 years ago. I went with my friend Mary Reddick, whom
Hmm.
you should also have on your show because she's amazing.
I
She's
love
an
that.
ancestral nutritionist. She's
Hook me
fabulous.
up.
I will. I'll connect you. So anyway, we were in Ethiopia, and our guide slash translator was taking us to visit these tribes along the Omo Valley. I
Hmm.
mean, it was a phenomenal trip. We saw the Mercy and the Dasanach, these different tribes, some of the women that would, put the clay plates in
Right.
their lips to
Exactly.
extend them. I mean, it was amazing, amazing. Of course, like I told you, they're all getting up with the sun and all these things. Well, our guide said, Hilda and Mary, I want you to help me because I'm trying to raise money to get shoes for these children in these villages. And I was like, I'm sure if he had talked to any other American, they would have been like, here's my money. And I had to explain to him, I was like, I kind of called him George for short. Mulue is his name. But I said, George, this is the thing. These children are well in part because their feet are on the ground.
Right.
I know he thought he was doing a favor, maybe getting them sandals or shoes, but I don't see it that way, Sergey. I think we need to return to these traditions. Now, I'm not saying you can go barefoot on the asphalt. I tried this for a time and it was actually very painful. Um, no, I'm not saying that. But get your feet on that ground. Go to the beach. Do what you can. And if it's cold, which it sometimes is in my part of the world, I touch trees. I look like a tree hugger. I get it, but the trees are getting the energy from the earth, so you can get it vicariously.
Right.
But this is something that's so simple. People are often thinking, how can I lose weight? I'm overweight. The sun and the soil are healing, and that is one way to kind of get your metabolism and your hormones back into balance.
My mom was a phenomenal gardener. And she would always say that she would just go out and pick and prune and sniff and just love on her garden. But she always said that when she grew up on a big farm, a big ranch, and she was like, it gives me energy to be out there and to touch and nurture these plants. And I always thought that was a form of grounding as well, because you're
Absolutely.
working with that item that is grounded in the earth. And she
Yes.
dug in it and everything. I mean, and I grew up doing that too.
Oh my gosh, this makes me so happy because, yes, I think in this day and age, the thing we touch the most is the phone. There's
Hmm.
nothing tangible there. This is why I think, Sergey, people are getting back to making sourdough bread, making sauerkraut. Like they're like, I need to touch something real.
Right.
And so, yes, when she was doing that, she was nourishing your family so well. And I want to tell you a quick story. When I was in Colombia recently, I was talking to these mamos, these wisdom keepers of these tribes, as I said. And when I asked them, because they said everything's out of balance right now, and I said, well, how can we return to balance and harmony with nature. They said food. That was the first thing they
Mm-hmm.
said. First, they said, eat local, okay. But they said to level it up even more. And this is the way I'm framing it, but this is kind of what they were saying. They said it in much wiser words than this, but they said to level it up more, grow your own, because you're putting your own energy. Your mom was putting her own
Yeah.
energy and love into those plants. So they were going to be particularly, especially nourishing for her family. Like, it's just so amazing to me. I'm not the queen of gardening. My husband and my daughter are out there working on it a little bit more than me, but I'm like so thankful that they're doing any little bit. And I've interviewed people who say, goodness, just get a tomato plant going. Like, it doesn't have to be amazing,
Right.
just something, because it is healing on a multitude of levels.
Do you think that one of the reasons that we are, as a society, so pushed into living into cities and stacking people, stories high, and then living in a concrete jungle is a way to make the population sick?
That is a great question. And I try so hard to stay positive and not think about such things, but I have to say, I think we've been sold a bill of goods. I mean, and where do I begin? Like, where do I begin? I've been podcasting for the Weston A. Price Foundation for 10 years, and every person I talk to says the system is stacked against our health. I'll just put it that way. Because from when we're little and we go to pre-K and then kindergarten for like 18 years, we're in these buildings. Maybe we get a half-hour recess if we're lucky. You know what I mean? Like, we're in these buildings, we're trained to respond to a bell, to get in line. It's almost like a prison,
Right.
and then we're wired to think, oh, when I'm done with that school, I need to keep studying. Why? So I can get a good job and make a lot of money and live in a city and have a penthouse, and we're missing what's important. We've just been sold a bill of goods. And I try not to think that it's intentional, because I like to think of the best of everyone. But I will say that this kind of conventional way of thinking isn't helping us. What do we have as a result? We have anxiety. We have depression. We're connected online, but disconnected in real life. Do we even know our neighbors? We're disconnected from our food. Like I said, we're these astronauts, and I don't think we were meant to live this way. And this reminds me, when I went to Alaska like 5 years ago. Don, I'm sorry if you're saying something. I'll stop in a second. But when I was
No,
in
she's just
Alaska-
agreeing with you.
Okay. When I was in Alaska 5 years ago, I met this young boy from a certain tribe. There are indigenous people all over the world if you just open your eyes and look for them. So I met this boy at this cultural center. He said he was from like the Athapascan tribe. And he said, when he was showing me some artifacts from back in the day, he showed me this replica of a long community dwelling place. He said, yes, we used to live in these long dwelling places that could accommodate like 300 people in our community. He said, until the government came to help us. And I was like,
Right.
That's when single family homes started appearing in Alaska. This is probably like in the 1950s. And that tore at the fabric of communities. I don't think we're meant to live just in a nuclear family. The reason moms are so stressed is because they're trying to cook and take care of their children and clean the house and do everything alone. In communities, when I went in Ethiopia, for example, the moms were together with all of their children preparing a meal, but they were together. It wasn't just one mom trying to do it all herself. That's practically impossible. So there's a lot that is making us stressed and unwell. And I really don't know where to start with all of that, except that I think if we can go back, we can't recreate all of these things, but I'm happy to see this movement afoot of people like thinking, I want community. Where can I find my people who want to live in a healthy alternative way? Because the conventional system, I would say, educationally and medically and in terms of our living situations, it's not helping us at all.
It's absolutely not. It's odd that you bring that up, because we here at the Clear Skies Movement, on this show, we have actually talked, 2 weeks ago, maybe?
I don't know.
About 2 weeks ago, a couple of Fridays ago, about what would it look like? Can we design a community? Let's say we start with 100 people, so we have voting rights. We go in, we buy a piece of land, and then we have homes that are like earth bag homes or straw bale homes or cob homes, right? A more natural approach, raise our own food, grow our own food, but we can use technology like Starlink or whatever, right? We're not becoming the Amish, although they have a very healthy way of life, but what it is a group of like-minded people raising their own food, raising their own beef, raising their own, goat
Their own
milk.
children.
Yeah, and
Yes.
exactly. And then have communal areas where we can all get together and cook, or a few people can get together and cook, or you can cook at your home. It's not mandatory, but I think that it's a natural filter for people wanting that style of life. There is such, I grew up, pardon me, in a time in the 60s and 70s when we still had a hint of that. And families got together in communities for barbecues and cookouts, and a number of the men would take all the kids up hiking or fishing. I mean, we have lost this sense of community that I think is as important as nutrition. But that said, growing your own food, I think is absolutely paramount. I listened to years ago. I listened to I forget what program it was on, but it was a doctor that deals with obese people, and he tells his clients, you can eat as much as you want as long as you grow it yourself and as long as you raise it or hunt it yourself.
Whoa.
And he said, if you do that, the amount of work you have to put in for every calorie you take out, he said, it absolutely will revolutionize your life. And I wish I could remember his name, but I thought it was very, very smart.
It's called balance.
Yeah, it really is balance. Speaking of balance, baby, what are they saying over there in the
I
chat?
gotta put my glasses back on. They love you.
Yeah.
It takes a village, Sue Pear says. This is fantastic, Pat says.
Absolutely.
They're loving your energy. I'm in, says Pat.
Pat, there you go.
I love it so much. Yeah, I want to tell a quick story about Mongolia. So, Mongolia is between Russia and China,
Right.
and it is one of the harshest, I think, countries in the world.
Oh, my God.
To live
Yeah.
in a very inhospitable environment, and yet the Mongolian people are strong.
Mhm.
They're resilient, and to your last point about community, they have an open door policy, literally. So my friend Mary and I were traveling there too, actually. We flew into the capital, Ulaanbaatar, and then we took like another little plane to Western Mongolia, and then we took a van. Like, it was crazy to get to see these eagle hunters. Have you heard of eagle hunters before?
No.
Oh, they're the ones that train eagles to go get prey for
Oh,
them.
right. Yeah. All right.
Sure.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
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 I think, like,
Falconeers.
yeah,
Like,
Kennedy does the falconing, different people do falconing, but these people do it with eagles. Anyway,
it's a big bird.
they live in these very remote areas, but if you happen to be traveling through, if they're away visiting cousins or whatever, they just leave their yurt or their gur, their home, open. They'll even leave food there for you. Like, it's just an open door policy because they know how harsh it is out there.
Exactly.
So they want to invite you in. They showed Mary and I so much hospitality. It was so beautiful. And to your point about food, Sergey, they would eat only what they had. Obviously, that's what they had. They couldn't go into town. Ulaanbaatar is like miles and miles and miles away. So they ate a lot of meat products. They ate a lot of fat and some soups and maybe a little biscuit made of cheese curds. Like, it was amazing. And these people, the Mongolian people, as you may know, were conquerors for a time. because they were
Absolutely.
so
Genghis
hip
Khan.
and Party. Yes, exactly. So it's like, wow, can we eat what we make? Can we, somehow make some shifts so that we can have this vibrant way of living,
Right.
even that hospitality. I think when we're living in cities, and I'm living in one right now, actually, there's a tendency of like contraction, I would say,
Right.
as opposed to expansion. There's a tendency to be like, oh, I must protect what is mine, and lock the doors and all these things. But look at how opposite it is in Mongolia. So I love your idea of community. I know also that the Weston A. Price Foundation, I just want to segue here to say, they have chapter leaders, individuals all around the world actually, who want to help people find real food. So if
Oh,
people just go to westonaprice.org and click on find food or local chapters, you can see, like, if you live in Sacramento, California, or in Dallas, Texas, you just look up who is the closest chapter leader and they'll help you find food. But they also help people find community, because some of these chapter leaders will have events and gatherings, and there's a sense in which people are longing for this so much that they're making it happen, like what you described a moment ago.
yeah. You know what? I mean, so one of our tenets as the Clear Skies movement is health. We have to make people healthy. We have to live healthy. And I'd love to connect with the Weston A. Price Foundation and whatever we can do to help facilitate them working through us. I'm all in. So if you have anybody that I can talk to, please do, because I can guarantee you we will hear in the chat people want that.
Oh,
And
good.
it's fat, and cholesterol. There we go. It looks like I need some more. You're right. We have been sold a bill of goods when it comes to the understanding of how food actually feeds us. Sugar, bad. Fat, cholesterol, meat, real plant life, roots. Entire societies have lived this way for hundreds of thousands of years, and yet in the last 80, I'd say 100, we have gotten away from that. And I mean, we've got obesity, we've got all sorts of brain disease, heart disease, high blood pressure, anxiety. We have people who simply cannot function from very early ages because they are filling their bodies with horrible food. And to your point about prisons earlier, I always found it funny that the same company that makes food for public schools is the same companies that make food for prisons. And it really, I think it's telling that we have that approach when a prison has a labor force that really doesn't have a lot to do all day long. They could be out there gardening, ranching, and I think that it would do their souls a lot of good if they did that. And I remember. Oh,
I just have a question though. But this is all great and all, but we're being poisoned. Our land is being poisoned. How do you grow all this healthy stuff and then you eat it and it's all full of stuff that's just been coming out of our skies and the rain? And
That's a great question, Dawn. Yeah, so I interviewed, I believe it was Matt Landman. He's
right.
the one who made that movie Frankenskies. You might have had him on, Sergey. Anyway, he was saying that was his aha. Oh, no, maybe it was Dane Wigington. Anyway, I've interviewed a lot of these fellows who are
Yeah,
in
Matt
this
Landman
Clear
did
Sky movement.
Frankenskies, and then
Yes, he
Dane
did do
Wingington
Frankenskies.
did the
He
dimming.
did the dimming the sun, the dimming or something. Yes. But one of them was out literally just gardening, and he's like, wait a minute, why is barium in my soil and it wasn't there before? And he started getting this aha. So your question is a valid one. And I guess it reminds me of that old serenity prayer from those 12-step programs, which is something like, God, give me the wisdom to, how does it go? Do you know?
Grant me the strength to, yeah.
Like-
I've never been through a 12-step program. I know I look like I should have been, but I don't
no.
blame you for saying that. But
like,
yeah.
Yeah, God, give me the serenity to, well, anyway, the point is to know what I can act on and what I have control over and what I don't, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Absolutely.
So I'm trying to summarize it because my point is this. Like, I can't control at this juncture what they're spraying above me, but I can know the farmer that I'm getting my food from to make sure that they're not spraying extra things like
Exactly.
glyphosate and pesticides that I don't want. If it kills the bug, what's it doing to me? And so I try to be careful with the choices I make, and do the best I can under the circumstances. But this is one of the secrets, actually. So I want to go back to that. My 6 ancestral secrets, I'll start with S. The sun is one. Spirit is one that we've also touched on.
There we go.
Being in community, being a person that does things that makes their soul shine. Those are things really important. I found that all over the world. But also sustenance is one of the secrets. And so we need to go back to whole, real, single ingredient foods. Foods, as they say, that our grandmother or our great grandmother would recognize as food. Nothing in a packaged or canned. This is what Dr. Price noted. So I mentioned the Weston Price Foundation. Just a little background. As I said, he was the one that traveled the world looking for the healthiest people. He noticed that the healthy peoples had no refined or denatured foods, no processed, ultra processed foods, because he could compare isolated indigenous people groups, let's say, for example, in Switzerland, with those that had access to the outside world and started to get canned foods and oils and sugars and white flours. And he saw their physical degeneration. Dr. Price wrote a book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. So he had these pictures, and even, I might even have the book on my shelf here somewhere, but he had these amazing pictures of the broad faces with the beautifully aligned teeth from the healthy indigenous peoples who were untouched by modern lifestyles and food ways, and then the more crowded teeth and the by consequence the health decline that these people experienced. And so then he took all these pictures and he wrote this book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, and it just points out the very thing you were saying, that we need to return to food that is nourishing and nutrient dense. Right now,
exactly,
in the US, we're overfed and undernourished. And so that's why you'll see people in cities from the lower socioeconomic class who are extremely overweight, and you're thinking, how is it possible if they're on the SNAP program? How are they overweight? It's because they're overfed and undernourished. Now, I am happy to report, I believe the government has just said that SNAP is no longer going to include sodas and candies and such.
Right.
And some people say, well, that's elitist. No, what we're really trying to do is to nourish people well and make it so that they're making the best choices, as guiding them, I guess I would say, to make the best choices. If they want to earn their own money and buy their own candy, they can. But if they're not, let's do the best we can by them.
I could not agree more. I read that this morning, that RFK had put that out. What we're seeing is the development of the brain. Are you familiar with the Edison School District? It was a private school district. They would take over inner city schools. I think they started in Philadelphia and then moved quite a ways into Detroit and all of these places that had very tumultuous student bodies. The very first thing they did was change the menu. And they sourced as local as they could, and they fed these kids, because some of these kids ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner at these schools. Those were the only meals that they got that had any kind of nutrition. Within weeks, kids that had been acting out, had been erratic or couldn't concentrate, couldn't work, were now being productive part of those classrooms. Also, the school days were much shorter. They had a lot more outdoor time, and it literally revolutionized teaching. What was I'm trying to remember the name of the book, but it'll come to me.
Sure.
The whole point is that food is so much more important, not to just how the body works, but how the brain works, how the soul works, if people believe in the soul, right? Because what it does is it nurtures the whole rather than take away from the whole.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. Whether or not people believe in their soul, they must know that there's more to us than just meets the eye. We are not just flesh and bone. This is why spirit is one of my ancestral secrets. And so when your body is well nourished, your spirit, you can dream, you can love, you can give. But if you're the proof is in the pudding in those schools, right?
Yeah,
but when the
absolutely.
kids weren't nourished, they were angry, they were destructive, they were unkind, all the things. Yeah, I'll never forget the story. I think it was at the school, my husband was an athletic director, and at that school, there was this kid that was swiping cookies off the teacher's desk. He was just misbehaving. They found out later he was just hungry. He was
Right.
just hungry. And so Dr. Price also, he did an experiment in a local school. He was a dentist in Ohio. And he thought, if I just give these kids one good meal, let's see what happens. Behavior improved. The kids were seeing better. Like all these improvements happened physically and emotionally. So we cannot underestimate the power of a good meal. And this is one reason I'm happy. Nina Teicholz and others right now, as part of this like Maha movement, and whether or not you're conservative or liberal, it doesn't matter to me,
Exactly.
but I'm all about making everyone healthier. So Nina Teicholz wrote The Big Fat Surprise. And she was surprised as a journalist to find that fat, just like you were saying earlier, fat actually nourishes us, that the body needs fat. And it's important for cognitive function, for hormonal function, all the things. So she wrote this book, and now she's helping to shape the new dietary guidelines. And I'm so thrilled because that whole grain at the bottom of the
Oh
pyramid
my
thing,
goodness.
suddenly everyone was shaped this way when we started eating that way. It was such a disservice. Obesity went up, heart attacks went up. Everyone was dutifully trying to follow the U.S. dietary guidelines, and they were not doing us any favors. So what do we need to do? We need to return to, like I said, the whole real food, single ingredient foods as much as possible. I have a lot of friends who are focused on make sure you read the labels when you're in the grocery store, but I'm looking for food that doesn't have any labels.
Right.
And by the
Doesn't
way,
have a grocery store. It doesn't come with a
Exactly.
grocery store.
Right. The farm, there's farms in Pennsylvania not far from where I live. So I go to farmmatch.com. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're so cute. I
No,
think of
but
them as like Tinder for farms. Like they connect the farmer and the consumer, and you can swipe right and get raw milk. Like it's just so much fun. So I love it. So I
Can we
started.
can we talk a little bit about raw milk?
Oh, sure. I'm happy to.
I grew up in small farming communities. We drank raw milk, and one of my favorite things was to scoop that cream off the top. Don't tell my mom. And drink that, and
love
it was amazing. We now pasteurize everything. Do you think that pasteurization is a good thing, or do you think we should go back to a little more rawness?
I definitely vote for rawness, and here's why. Pasteurization, it's kind of like let's say chemotherapy for a cancer patient. They're trying to get rid of something that's bad in the body, but by doing so, they're like wiping out all this good stuff too. And so it's kind of like if you're trying to get rid of rats in the garage and you throw a bomb in the garage. Well, you got rid of the rats, but you also got rid of the garage.
There we go.
So with pasteurization, they're getting rid of actually the pathogen fighting enzymes that are already in raw milk. Raw milk is a wonderful food for calves, but also for human beings. When I went to Kenya and I met the Maasai, they thrive on raw milk.
Right.
So the real deal is not going to make you sick. The reason people were getting sick back in the day is because the cows were not always in sanitary conditions. So you do want to check your sources. There's actually a website that is funded by the Weston A. Price Foundation called realmilk.com. You can find a map, plug in your zip code, find out where you can get raw milk near you. Farm Match also, I think, will help you find raw milk, meat, whatever you're looking for, eggs, fresh eggs. But raw milk is nothing to fear. As a matter of fact, I know many people whose skin conditions cleared up because of raw milk, brain fog cleared up because of raw milk. Like it really is a very nourishing food. And if you think about it, breast milk, often baby's first food, it's raw milk, basically.
Exactly.
So I think there's nothing to fear in it. I love it. We got on the raw milk train probably some 10 to 12 years ago, and we're never going back.
So food, raw milk. What about seed oils? Because there's a lot of seed oil. When you go into any store,
Yes.
virtually every restaurant will cook with a seed oil. A lot of higher end restaurants are kind of making the move to tallow. But is there anything wrong with seed oil? Does it help your gut health? Is it doing a good job? We know that we have avocado oil and what are the other really, olive oil and macadamia nut oil and almond milk and oat milk, and those don't even have milk.
Yeah, I'm always like, those nut milks are nuts because
Yeah, they're not good for you.
But okay, your question about seed oils. Kate Shanahan put it best when I interviewed her on the Wise Traditions podcast. I actually think it was an episode on cholesterol because we've only kind of tangentially talked about that. But she said, seed oils are oxidative stress in a bottle. Basically, these are so ultra processed that they're rancid. Actually, what they do is they take these seeds, to extract anything from them, which would be very hard. That's why our ancestors didn't do that. They did maybe probably coconut oil, they did lard, they did tallow. What was easier was to use the fat of the animal, for goodness sakes. But we get these little seeds like the rapeseed or the soybean, and we try to get oil out of it. This extrusion process is at very high temperatures, so it becomes rancid quickly, but they deodorize it, they colorize it, and they sell it as heart healthy. These are basically like petroleum byproducts. They're great lubricants for a car or a tractor.
Isn't that what they used to be?
Yes, but they're not good for the heart. Cottonseed oil, like no one would ever think of eating that. But no. I bought into the lie. I remember, Sergey, walking down the supermarket aisle, seeing all these, nice little oils, not olive oil, but yellow oils in bottles, and thinking, which one? I don't know which vegetable oil to get. And they're not even vegetable oils. Now, at least the truth is being told that they are seed oils, that they are rancid, they're not good for us. We want to return to natural oils, just like we want to return to natural foods. So I recommend tallow, butter, lard, coconut oil, avocado oil is fine too. Olive oil is great. Just whatever our ancestors used. And before anyone says anything about the blue zones, I have something to add here. So the authors of the Blue Zones went to look for centenarians around the world, and they claimed that some of them were vegetarians or, using these other oils instead of lard to cook in. And a friend of mine actually went to this peninsula I think it was either in Costa Rica or Panama. And her name is Gina Baker. Because she's like, I want to find out for myself. So she found some centenarians and said, what did you cook in? They said lard, of course. She said, wait. You did not tell the Blue Zone guys that you were using lard. He said, we knew they didn't want to hear that. We were embarrassed. We didn't want to say it, but that's all we had. They didn't have any other kind of oil back in the day.
Exactly.
Now, it does break my heart, I have to say, on my travels when I see, indigenous peoples, some Maasai, and they've got this bottle of canola oil. Why do they have it? Because it's cheap. And they think, oh, this must be good. It's Western. It must be good. But we're exporting all the wrong things. And I went there and I told the Maasai, some of my friends in this Maasai village, I said, please don't eat the American way. I said, please eat the way you always have. And I'm happy to say this particular village in Oiti, they said, okay, we're going to go back to our traditional ways. Not because of my wisdom, but because of the wisdom that they had had from millennia before. And they were just being reminded of.
Years ago, I drove through 25, 30 years ago through Western Washington, and I've been across and up and down this nation. There's not farmland that I really haven't seen. You never used to see yellow fields, but today you see enormous amounts, right?
Yeah, the flowers, the yellow flowers.
Which is canola.
Canola oil.
Canola it grows fast. It's cheap to produce. And now it really, to hear that the Maasai now have access to something that the human body should not be ingesting is, I don't know, it's frightening.
It's almost evil.
It is.
Well, and I didn't even tell you this. The reason I was at this village is because the Maasai warrior found the Weston A. Price Foundation. He said, please send someone over. We're all getting sick. He said, I have diabetes. My wife has asthma. He had seen the physical degeneration in his own family. Because they were taking in these modern foods. And Dr. Price called them the displacing foods of modern commerce. So lest people are like, well, Hilda hasn't looked at the science or Sergey doesn't know. I always say N equals 1, meaning try it out for yourself. For 2 weeks, try butter, lard. I think the fats, it's great to get your fats straight, so go start with the fats and just replace those and see what happens to your energy, to your mood, to your sleep, to your satiation. The reason people buy a bag of chips and can't stop eating them is because the body's like, where's the nutrients? It tastes like fat, but I'm not getting what I need to keep going. So never think that it's poor willpower, because I don't think that's it. I think the body has an innate wisdom and it's saying, keep going because something good is coming. And the problem is it doesn't know that you're eating this processed food and you're not giving it what it needs. But what it really craves is fat. This is why the leanest, happiest people I've ever met are the ones, high on fat, really.
Right. Exactly. It is absolutely every time that we see some indigenous population that is untouched or barely touched by man, the masses are extremely healthy. They are essentially have a warrior mentality. They are in love with wherever they live, be it Mongolia, as tough as it is, or in Hawaii on some distant island. It's when you start putting shoes on people who should not have them. I've heard that the two things that really, one of the reasons we're so mineral deficient as human beings, number one, we used to absorb minerals through our feet, walking on the ground. Number two is we used to eat food cooked over open fires, and that wood really infused that meat with necessary minerals. We simply don't have that. Now we cook with gas or electricity, but we don't get that benefit
from the charcoal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
oh my gosh, that's such a good point.
what is that doing to our gut health also? I mean, if we don't, if we're putting poison like canola or soybean oil is soybean in general should not be eaten. The estrogen content, especially for baby boys, it's insane. I don't know if you've ever read the book Crazy Makers, but it truly changed my life in understanding how foods do that. So what do you think about gut? Are we in a gut health crisis in America and closing in on around the planet?
Yes, no doubt about it. And as you know, there is a gut brain connection. So, Crazy Makers is exactly right. When you're not well nourished, when your gut is off, whether you have SIBO or Crohn's or, some, autoimmune condition that's related to digestion, like that affects your brain, your mood, all the things. Dr. Price noted when he traveled the world how optimistic the people were, how happy they were. You're exactly right. In Switzerland, and in Scotland, there was like this windswept area of the island. The people had like stuffed cod head for breakfast. It's like, that doesn't sound very good. They were pleased as punch,
Yeah.
because they were well nourished. So you're right. There's definitely a gut crisis right now, and I think it helps to reconnect with the dirt, actually. And I just interviewed someone on the Wise Traditions podcast about this too. Clay, medicinal clay, can help heal and seal the gut. Zach Bush
Oh.
has talked about this too. He had
Like
this,
bentonite?
yes, bentonite clay. He had an ion product, and I think some others that help heal and seal the gut. So there's a reason why pregnant women get pica, where they want to eat clay. There's
Right.
something very healing about it internally and externally. But I'm bringing this up in the context of gut health because people are like, oh, do I need to pop pills the rest of my life, or what do I need to do?
Right.
I would suggest clay. Look into the uses of bentonite clay internally. I would also suggest bone broth. That can be very, very healing. Meat stock, actually, the GAPS diet, it's the gut and psychology syndrome diet that Natasha Campbell McBride brought to the fore. When you nourish yourself well, you might need to start with an elimination diet of sorts. Simplify your diet, because a lot of people have sensitivities or allergic reactions to things because there are holes in their gut. So, things are kind of getting through the gut lining into the bloodstream, and their body's reacting with rashes or sores or bloating and what have you. So we have to go back, and it's not going to be easy, but do a little bit of an elimination diet. Actually, this is one reason I think, Sergey, that the carnivore diet is trending right now, because in essence, it's an elimination diet.
Oh,
They're getting
right.
rid of all the variables. And while I love meat as much as the next person, I still think it's good to have a bit of a variety in the diet when possible. So I'd like to have some vegetables here and there. And Dr. Price actually thought he would find vegetarian people, and he never did. So meat is important. It is a central part of the
Right.
wise traditions diet, meat and fat and so forth. So, but going back to your point, yes, there is a gut health crisis, and it's affecting our minds as well. So thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely. So now we've gone over the sun, spirit, and sustenance. What are the next 2 or 3 items on your ancestral approach?
You noticed, I was like, those last 3, I've got to tell you, and this is not in order, but sleep is one. You know, you were talking about elementary school kids and kids' behavior in school. Half the time they're just exhausted.
Right.
They're just exhausted. And parents are too. We think, oh, Netflix, let's just watch all night. You know, let's binge watch some things while the kids are in bed. We're getting that blue light. It's keeping you awake. At least wear blue blockers. If not, take a page from our ancestors or indigenous tribes book and start to wind down after the sun goes down. Like avoid screens if possible. Definitely avoid your phone. Wear blue blockers. Make sure your room is dark. Sleep is critical. It's the time of detoxing for the brain and
Yeah.
for the body too. It takes the trash out. And if you don't give the body enough time to do that, it's going to start to pile up. And that's why you start to think, oh, I don't remember. What's that guy's name again? Like it's all escaping you in part because you haven't slept sufficiently. Matthew Walker wrote Why We Sleep. And in it, he said scientists still actually don't know, but they do know that it's very good for us. So I do recommend sleep as the best detox ever. Forget the green smoothies, go for the sleep. Then the other 2 are shivers, which is alike to the sun one, and that we got to get out in the environment more. Let's not be afraid to get cold. It actually is a stimulant for the mitochondria. In other words, these little engines in our cells, they need exercise.
Yeah.
And when you get cold, it like makes them work harder to keep you warm, and like it's good. Some people say that all disease is because of mitochondrial dysfunction. So we need more of the sun, but also more of the cold. And Native American tribes used to dip their children in cold creeks. And so I've jumped in ice baths and done things like this because I want to keep my mitochondria strong, and this helps you live long as well. And then the only other one that we didn't touch on was strength. Which is about movement, just like language, you got to move it or you'll lose it, and so all over the world, a lot of movement is incorporated as part of the day-to-day. In Ethiopia, the women would go down to the river to collect water a couple times a day and carry it on jugs on their head.
Right.
We might not have that opportunity in our sedentary workspaces nowadays, so we might have to be more intentional about it, but it really is important because motion is lotion, and it's a great anti-aging hack.
Exactly. I guess the famous saying, a body in motion stays in motion, a body at rest stays at rest.
That's right.
I think that there it begs the question, do people have the ability to change and don't? Or have we grown an excuse society that it makes it easy for us to just not do it because I'm too busy?
I think it sometimes takes a pain point for people to make a change. Like a couple will just kind of drift along until one of them says, this isn't working. And the other one's like, wait, what? Now something has to change because it's radical. You're doing fine until your back goes out and you're like, okay, something's got to change. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, though.
Yep.
So how do we make that change? I suggest we start simply. And this is why I end every podcast with what's the one thing the listener can do to improve their health? Because I figure if they just take one thing away and try to put it into action, those habits will stack until suddenly you are living your healthiest and best life. My goal, actually, Sergey, is for people to give health only as a second thought. They're not even worried about it because most of us spend all of our time and all of our money chasing health. People are so sick now and they're so tired and they're so depressed and anxious. And I'm like, this shouldn't be. So my goal is for that to happen for people. But you're right. We have to take some responsibility. We can't have a victim mindset. If it's all very overwhelming, just start with one thing. And maybe from this conversation would be get your fats straight. Start with the fats and then maybe go with the sun. And that could be enough to turn your whole world around.
That is fantastic. We have 1 minute left. How can people find you?
Okay, I'm Holistic Hilda on Instagram. I've got a Holistic Hilda YouTube channel. I'm the host and producer of the Wise Traditions podcast. And if people want to find out more about my course and other offerings, they can go to my website, holistichilda.com.
Are you on X at all? We have a very big following on X.
I'm going to try to get back on there. My account got lost when it went from Twitter to X, and I never got back on. But if you can find me, I'm Holistic Hilda on X too.
All right. We'll start sending people your way.
Okay.
Hilda, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I'm sure we could do another hour. Yeah.
Yeah, it's way too short.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for all that you're doing. I'm all about the Clear Skies movement.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
you.
And we'd love to have you back sometime.
Thank you so much. I think we can work that out.
All right. Wonderful. I'll talk to Lindsay.
Do it.
All right.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, there we go. And that, I'll tell you, this is just absolutely the kind of information that we really need. But it is the end of the hour, and so I am just going to say thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that interview. She was great.
I loved her.
For all of us, I'm Sergey Brown.
And I'm Dawn.
And we'll see you next time.